On the night of March 24th, 1922, at exactly 7:34 p.m., a radio transmission climbed up through 2,000 feet of Kentucky limestone and coal. The voice belonged to Michael Chen, a 34-year-old rescue foreman from Lexington. He'd volunteered to descend into the Widow's Vein mine after 127 men stopped responding to surface communication. What he said in those final 43 seconds would be classified by the United States government for 76 years. Surface. This is Chen. We've reached level 9. We found them. All of them. There's a pause here. 7 seconds. You can hear him breathing. Fast. Wrong. They're standing. Every single one. Facing the wall. They won't turn around. They won't respond. We're calling their names, but... Another pause. 11 seconds this time. In the background, another voice. Quiet. Asking a question we can't make out. There's something here. There's a hole in the rock face. It wasn't on the survey maps. It wasn't on any maps. The air coming out of it. Christ, the air is warm. How is the air warm this far down? 15 seconds pass. When Chen speaks again, his voice has changed. Flatter. Older somehow. They're turning around now. All of them. At the same time. Their eyes. God in heaven, their eyes aren't... They're not... The transmission cuts to static. Michael Chen never spoke again. Neither did the 7 men who descended with him. Neither did the 127 miners they found standing in the dark. But 36 hours later, all 135 of them came back up. They came back up in the elevator cage, standing, silent, eyes open. At 12:03 in the morning, the families waiting at the surface watched their husbands, their fathers, their sons emerge from the earth. Every single man was alive. Every single man was standing perfectly still. Every single man was facing outward, toward the crowd, with eyes that didn't blink. Dr. Abraham Hendricks, the company physician, examined the first group of returned miners. His hands shook so badly he could barely write. His medical report, discovered in a storage facility in 1995, contains one line repeated 14 times across 3 pages. Physiologically normal, physiologically normal, physiologically normal. But at the bottom of the final page, in handwriting that deteriorates into barely legible scroll, he wrote something else. They have no pulse in their left wrists, only their right. The heart is beating on the wrong side. 135 men entered the Widow's Vein mine on March 24th, 1922. 135 men returned. But in the weeks that followed, something became clear to the families who took them home, to the doctors who examined them, to the minister who prayed over them. The men who came back were not the men who went down. This is not a legend. This is not folklore passed down through generations until truth becomes myth. This happened in Harlan County, Kentucky, in living memory, and the United States government has spent a century making sure you never heard about it. Until now. My name is irrelevant. What matters is this. I have the documents. I have the testimonies. I have the photographs they tried to destroy. I have the journals of Reverend Elijah Marsh, who watched it unfold and wrote down every detail until the day he died, 32 years later, still watching the sealed mine entrance. I have the declassified military files from 1998, released under Freedom of Information, and then quietly reclassified 6 months later. But I got them. I have them. And I have the geological surveys from 2003 that prove the cavity is real. That prove something hollow exists beneath that mountain. Something vast. something that shouldn't be there according to every law of geology we understand. The question isn't whether this happened. The evidence is overwhelming. The question is what happened in the dark beneath Black Vein, Kentucky. What did those men find on level 9? What did they touch? What touched them back? And why, after the government sealed that mine with explosives and concrete, why do people still disappear near that location? Why do the seismographs still register rhythmic vibrations from deep underground? Vibrations that match, almost exactly, the pattern of human breathing? In 1922, the town of Black Vein, Kentucky, had a population of 847 people. By 1923, it had 0. The government evacuated everyone, paid them off, threatened them, erased the town from official maps. If you look at a geological survey from 1921, you'll see Black Vein clearly marked. If you look at one from 1924, there's just empty space. The roads leading to it were torn up. The buildings were left to rot. The mine entrance was buried under 60 tons of concrete and steel. But the concrete is cracking now, and the breathing is getting faster. Over the next 15 hours, I'm going to tell you everything. I'm going to show you the documents they classified. I'm going to read you the testimonies of the survivors, the families who fled, the children who watched their fathers come home with something else looking out through their eyes. I'm going to show you the photographs, the medical reports, the impossible geometric patterns the returned miners carved into every surface they could reach. Patterns that mathematicians still can't explain because they represent dimensions we don't have names for. I'm going to play you the audio recordings the military made when they tried to communicate with whatever was inside those men. Recordings that should terrify you, not because of what the voices say, but because of what responds when they stop talking. And at the end, I'm going to tell you where the mine is located, because it still exists. The seal is cracking, and some of you, after hearing this, will want to go there. Some of you will feel cold. If you do, remember this. 135 people answered that call in 1922. They went into the dark beneath the mountain. They found something waiting. Something that's been waiting for a very, very long time. And when they came back up, they weren't screaming. They weren't running. They weren't warning anyone to stay away. They were smiling. All of them. The same smile. This is the documented account of the Black Vein vanishing, the event the government calls Industrial Accident 1922K, the event the few surviving witnesses call the day they came back wrong. What you're about to hear is true, all of it. I wish it wasn't. Let me tell you about Harlan County, Kentucky in 1922. Let me tell you about the men who dug too deep. Let me tell you about the hollow places beneath the world and what lives in them. Let me tell you what happens when human beings touch something that was never meant to be touched. And let me tell you why, right now, as I speak these words, the thing beneath that mountain is waking up. It started 3 weeks before the vanishing, March 3rd, 1922. The night shift on level 8 heard something they couldn't explain. But before I tell you what they heard, you need to understand what Black Vein was. You need to understand the desperation that kept those men going down into the earth, day after day, even after the strange things started happening. You need to understand that they knew something was wrong. They went down anyway. Because in 1922, in coal country, you either went down into the mine, or you watched your family starve. And when the company that owned your house, your food, Your life itself told you to dig deeper. You dug, even when the canaries started dying for no reason, even when the echoes in the tunnels started sounding wrong. Harlan County, Kentucky. The eastern edge of Appalachia, where the mountains grow old and fold in on themselves. Geological surveys from 1920 describe the region as actively unstable, with unusual subsurface characteristics. That's geology speak for something's wrong with the ground here. The coal companies didn't care. Black Vein was founded in 1887, the same year the Widow's Vein mine opened. The town existed for one reason: to extract anthracite coal from beneath Cumberland Mountain, high-grade coal, the kind that burns hot and clean, the kind worth dying for if you were the company, the kind worth killing for if you were desperate enough. By 1922, the mine had been operational for 35 years. In that time, 347 men had died in documented accidents, cave-ins, gas explosions, equipment failures, flooding, the usual ways miners died. But there were other deaths, the ones that didn't make the official records. Margaret Kowalski kept a diary from 1919 until her death in 1987. Her husband, Joseph, was one of the miners who vanished. In an entry from February 1922, 2 months before the incident, she wrote, "Joseph says men have been disappearing from the deep levels, not dying, disappearing. The company says they ran off, abandoned their jobs. But their lunch pails are still down there. Their tools are still down there. And Joseph says you can hear them sometimes, in the old shafts, calling out. But when you go to look, there's nobody there." The company records from 1920 to 1922 list 17 men as deserters. 17 men who supposedly walked off the job and vanished into the Kentucky wilderness without collecting their pay, without taking their belongings, without saying goodbye to their families. In Black Vein, where everyone knew everyone, where the company owned every building and controlled every dollar, where leaving meant abandoning everything you had, 17 men just walked away, the company said. The town in 1922 had a population of 847. That number comes from the last census, taken in January of that year. By March, several families had already left. The number was probably closer to 800. Of those 800 people, 623 were directly employed by the Consolidated Coal Corporation. The rest were their wives, their children, the shopkeepers who sold them goods on credit, the teacher who taught in the one-room schoolhouse, the minister who preached in the white-painted church at the end of Main Street. Everyone was owned by the company. Your house? Company owned. Rent deducted from your pay. Your food? Company store. Credit extended, interest accrued. Your medical care? Company doctor. Bills added to your debt. By the time most miners finished a month's work, they owed more than they'd earned. The system was designed that way. You couldn't leave because you couldn't afford to leave. The debt kept you trapped underground, digging coal, going deeper and deeper to meet quotas that increased every quarter. In 1922, the average miner in Black Vein owed the company $347. That's roughly $6,000 in today's money. Money they would never earn, digging coal they would never see, enriching men they would never meet. Thomas Garrett was the mine foreman, 43 years old, veteran of the Great War. Lost his left eye at Belleau Wood and came home to find his father dead in a cave-in on level 6. He took over as foreman in 1919. By all accounts, he was fair, hard, but fair. He fought the company for better safety equipment. He shut down sections he deemed too dangerous. He sent men home if they were too tired to work safely. The company tolerated him because he was good at his job. The miners trusted him because he'd been one of them. He understood what it meant to go down into the earth every day, knowing you might not come back up. On March 23, 1922, Thomas Garrett descended to level 9 for a routine inspection. He was gone for 4 hours. When he came back up, his remaining eye was bloodshot. His hands were shaking. He went directly to the company office and submitted his resignation. Effective immediately, he packed his belongings that night. By dawn, he was gone. His wife, Sarah, found a letter on the kitchen table. She kept that letter hidden for 63 years. When she died, in 1985, her daughter found it in a locked box. The letter was 3 sentences long. Thomas Garrett's resignation should have been a warning. The most experienced man in the mine, a man who'd survived European battlefields and 30 years underground, walked away from everything he had. The company replaced him the next day. The new foreman's name was Douglas Pike, 28 years old, transferred from a mine in West Virginia. No family, no ties to Blackvein, the kind of man the company could control. On his first day, March 24th, Pike received orders from corporate headquarters in Pittsburgh. Break through to level 10 by the end of the month, or the mine would be closed and the town evacuated. Level 10 had been on the survey maps since 1887. The original mine architect, a man named Cornelius Wade, had designed the Widow's Vein to eventually reach a depth of 2,400 feet across 10 levels. But they'd stopped at level 9. For 35 years, they'd stopped at level 9. Not because of the coal. The surveys showed rich veins below. Not because of the depth. Other mines went deeper. They stopped because Cornelius Wade, in his final report filed in 1888, wrote a single line of recommendation. Further excavation below level 9 is inadvisable for reasons of structural instability and worker safety. But in 1922, Consolidated Coal Corporation was hemorrhaging money. The post-war economy was collapsing. Labor strikes were spreading across coal country. They needed production. They needed profit. They needed level 10. Douglas Pike received his orders at 6 a.m. on March 24th. By 6:15, he'd assembled the day shift. 127 men. He told them they were going to break through to level 10. He told them there would be bonuses. He told them the company was counting on them. He didn't tell them about Thomas Garrett's letter. He didn't tell them about the 17 disappearances. He didn't tell them what was written in the margins of Cornelius Wade's 1888 report, in handwriting that deteriorated into frantic scroll. Heard voices from below during final survey, no men on lower levels. Voices not speaking English, not speaking any language. Recommend immediate cessation. At 6:47 a.m., 127 men descended into the Widow's Vein mine. The cage operator was a man named Robert Mills. He'd operated that cage for 19 years. He knew every man by name, knew their families, knew their stories. When interviewed years later, in 1973, Robert Mills was 84 years old and dying of black lung disease. The interviewer was a graduate student researching labor history, unaware of what Mills had witnessed. Near the end of the interview, Mills said something that the student almost didn't include in her thesis. That morning, March 24th, I remember it because of how quiet they were. Usually the men talked, joked around, tried to keep spirits up before going down. That morning, nobody said a word. They just stood in the cage, looking at the walls, looking down. And I remember thinking they looked like they were already underground, like they'd already gone down and come back, and this was just them going through the motions again. When I closed the gate, Tommy Bradford, he was a good man, had 3 kids. He looked at me, right at me, and he said, "Rob, if we're not back by sunset, don't come looking." I asked him what he meant. He said, "We found something last week, on 9, something we shouldn't have found. They're making us go back down." Then the cage dropped, and they were gone. I never saw Tommy Bradford again, none of them, not the same way anyhow. The recording continues, heavy breathing then. When they came back up that night, Jesus Christ, they weren't right. They weren't. Tommy Bradford was 34 years old. His 3 children were named Sarah, Michael, and Emma, ages 9, 7, and 4. His wife, Catherine, waited at home that morning, the same as every morning. She made breakfast. She got the children ready for school. She hung laundry on the line. She didn't know her husband had just descended into the earth for the last time. None of the families knew, but some of them suspected. Reverend Elijah Marsh was 41 years old in 1922. He'd been the minister of Black Vein Community Church for 6 years. Before that, he'd been a missionary in the Philippines. Before that, a scholar of ancient languages at Princeton. He'd given up academic life after what he described in letters as a crisis of faith and purpose. He came to Black Vein because he wanted to serve people who needed serving. Coal miners and their families. The forgotten people at the bottom of the economy. What he found in Black Vein changed him. His journals from 1920 to 1922 document a gradual shift in his thinking. In early entries, he writes about community, about faith, about the strength of the working poor, standard theology, hopeful, human. But by late 1921, the entries become strange. November 17th, 1921. The old women in the congregation have begun warning their sons not to work the deep levels. When I asked why, they said their grandmothers warned them the same thing, and their grandmothers before them. This land was considered cursed by the Cherokee who once lived here. They called the mountain the sleeping place, and would not enter certain valleys. I dismissed this as superstition. Now I'm not certain. January 3rd, 1922. 3 men came to me today asking for prayers of protection. Not the usual prayers. They wanted me to bless iron nails, to give them verses written on paper to carry underground. They were terrified. When I pressed them, they admitted they'd heard things on level 9. Voices, movement in collapsed tunnels that should be empty. I told them to report it to the foreman. They said Thomas Garrett had heard it too. That's why he stays on the upper levels now. March 15th, 1922. I descended into the mine today. Thomas Garrett tried to stop me. Said a minister had no business underground. I insisted. He finally agreed to take me down, but only to level 7. When we reached 7, I asked to go deeper. He refused. He looked me in the eye and said, "Reverend, there are things in this world that faith can protect you from. Things older than God. Things that were here first. Don't go looking for them." I didn't understand what he meant. I think I'm beginning to. March 23rd, 1922. The day before the vanishing, Reverend Marsh held evening services. Attendance was unusually high, 73 people in a church that normally held 40. Families crowded into pews, standing along the walls, sitting on the floor. They knew something was wrong. They came seeking comfort, seeking answers, seeking protection from something they couldn't name. Mary Hewitt was 16 years old. Her father, John, was one of the 127 miners. She survived the evacuation and lived until 2003. Before she died, she gave testimony to a local historian. She remembered that service. Reverend Marsh stood at the pulpit that night, and I could see his hands shaking. He opened his Bible, but he didn't read from it. He just stood there, looking at all of us, and then he closed the book. He said, "I'm going to tell you something that may sound like madness, but I need you to listen." He said, "There are places in this world where the ground is thin, where the barrier between here and somewhere else, somewhere older, is not as strong as it should be. Our ancestors knew about these places. They marked them. They avoided them. They told stories to keep their children away." He said, "This mountain is one of those places, and we've been digging into it for 35 years. Someone asked what he meant, what was on the other side. He said, "I don't know. But whatever it is, it's been waiting, and tomorrow they're going to dig deeper, and I'm afraid we're going to find out." My mother grabbed my hand so tight it hurt. My father sat perfectly still. He knew. They all knew. Every man in that church knew they were going down in the morning, and they went anyway, because if they didn't, the company would evict us. We'd lose everything, so they went down into the mountain, and they found what was waiting. That night, March 23rd, 1922, 17 families tried to leave Blackvein. They packed what they could carry and started walking toward the main road, 6 miles away. The company had guards posted, officially, to protect company property. In reality, to keep workers from fleeing their debts. The guards turned them back. 15 families returned to their homes. 2 families, the Daltons and the Hendersons, refused. They were arrested for theft of company property. The property being the clothes on their backs and the food in their bags, all purchased on company credit. They were released the next morning, March 24th, at 7 a.m. 1 hour after 127 men had descended into the mine. The Daltons and Hendersons left immediately. They walked through the morning, reaching the county road by noon. By evening, they were 20 miles away. They were the only families who escaped before it happened. When interviewed decades later, both families reported the same thing. They felt compelled to leave, a feeling of wrongness so profound they couldn't ignore it. Like the air itself was holding its breath, like the mountain was waiting for something. Sound, wind picking up, leaves rustling, the sense of a storm approaching, but no storm comes. March 24th, 1922, 6:47 a.m. 127 men descend. The morning is cold. Temperature 34 degrees Fahrenheit. Sky, overcast. Wind, southeast at 8 miles per hour. Normal morning, normal day. On the surface, wives make breakfast. Children go to school. The company store opens. The church stands quiet. Laundry hangs on lines. Dogs bark. Chickens scratch in yards. Normal. Underground, 127 men reach level 9 and begin preparing to break through to level 10. They set up drilling equipment. They mark the wall where they'll blast. They do everything according to procedure. Douglas Pike, the new foreman, oversees the operation. His notes, found later, show he followed company protocol exactly. 9:15 a.m. First blast scheduled. They drill the holes. They pack the explosives. They clear the area. They set the charges. At 9:13 a.m., 2 minutes before the scheduled blast, the drill operator, a man named Vincent Shaw, reports something unusual. His drill bit breaks through into empty space. Not a coal seam, not a collapsed tunnel, empty space. The drill pulls back. Air rushes out of the hole. Warm air. moving fast, like something exhaling. Vincent Shaw puts his hand near the hole. The air is 87 degrees Fahrenheit. They're 2,100 feet underground. The ambient temperature should be 55 degrees. The air is warm, and it smells wrong. Douglas Pike makes a decision. He orders the blast cancelled. He orders a larger exploratory hole drilled. He wants to see what's behind that wall before they commit to a full breach. By 10:30 a.m., they've widened the hole to 18 inches in diameter. Enough to get a light through. Enough to see. Vincent Shaw volunteers. He positions a carbide lamp at the opening. He looks through. His testimony was recorded 3 days later, before he stopped speaking entirely. I put the lamp to the hole, looked through, expected to see, I don't know, another tunnel, a cave, something geological. I saw space, not a room, not a cavern, space. The lamp couldn't reach the other side. The beam just went out into darkness, hundreds of feet, maybe thousands. The hole opened into something massive, and there were formations, structures, not natural, not made by humans either. Shapes that hurt to look at, angles that didn't make sense, like someone had built architecture in a place where geometry worked differently. I pulled back, told Pike what I saw. He didn't, believe me, looked through himself. He went pale, stepped back, stood there for a full minute without saying anything. Then he said, "We're expanding this hole. I need to report this to the surface." But before he could, we heard something. From inside. Movement. Something large. Moving in that space. Moving toward the hole. Toward us. Pike ordered everyone back. But the sound. It got closer. And then it stopped. Right on the other side of the wall. We could hear it breathing. That's when the company radioed down, told us to proceed with the full blast. Break through completely. They wanted access to whatever was in there. Pike argued. Said we needed to seal it. Said we needed to get out. Company overruled him. We set the charges. We cleared the area. And we opened the mountain. At 11:30 a.m. on March 24th, 1922, 127 men broke through the wall of Level 9. They opened a hole into something that shouldn't exist, something that had been sealed away, something that had been waiting. And at that moment, on the surface, every dog in Blackvein began howling. Every horse in town tried to break out of its stable. Every bird took flight. The animals knew. They knew something had changed. They knew something had been released. And underground, 127 men stood at the edge of the hole they'd made, staring into the darkness beyond, as something in that darkness stared back. What happened next? What they saw? What they found? That's when the communication stopped. That's when the silence began. And that's when the people of Blackvein realized that maybe Thomas Garrett had been right. Maybe there were things in this world that faith couldn't protect you from. Things older than mountains. Things that had been sleeping. Until we woke them up. To understand what happened on March 24th, you need to understand what had been happening in the weeks before. The signs were there, the warnings were clear. But in coal country in 1922, you didn't stop working because things felt wrong. You stopped working when you were dead. Let's go back 3 weeks. March 3rd, 1922. Night shift on Level 8. Level 8 was the second deepest operational level at that time, sitting at approximately 1,800 feet below the surface. The coal here was rich, dense anthracite. Good coal, valuable coal. The kind of coal that kept the company profitable and the town alive. The night shift was smaller than day shift. 43 men. They worked from 8 p.m. to 4 a.m., extracting coal from the eastern seam, loading it into carts, sending it up to the surface. Routine work. Dangerous work. But routine. The shift foreman was a man named Karl Brunner, German immigrant, 52 years old. He'd been mining since he was 14, first in Bavaria, then in Pennsylvania, finally in Kentucky. 38 years underground. He knew mines the way a sailor knows the sea. He could feel when something was wrong. On March 3rd, at approximately 11:47 p.m., Karl Brunner felt something wrong. Sound. Mining sounds continue. Then, underneath, something else, a low-frequency hum, almost inaudible. Narrator. His testimony was recorded on March 5th, 2 days after the incident. He was interviewed by Samuel Hicks, the mine safety inspector. The recording was made on a wax cylinder. That cylinder was stored in company archives until 1989, when the archives were sold to a university library. A graduate student digitized it in 2001. We were working the east wall. Normal work. Johann was drilling. Peter and Vincent were loading carts. I was checking the timber supports, making sure everything was stable. Then Johann stopped drilling. I asked him what was wrong. He said his drill was catching on something. Not rock, not coal. Something else. Something that felt hollow. I went over, looked at where he was drilling. The bit had gone in maybe 4 feet, normal depth. But when I put my ear to the stone, I could hear something on the other side, not empty space. You can tell empty space. It sounds dead. This sounded active, like air moving, like ventilation. But we don't have ventilation on 8. The air shafts are on 7 and 9. I told Johann to pull the bit out. When he did, we heard it clearer. A sound, low, constant, like wind through a tunnel, but rhythmic, too rhythmic. Peter asked what it was. I told him I didn't know, but I'd heard something like it before, in Bavaria, in a mine that collapsed 3 days later. I ordered everyone back. We moved to the west wall, away from that section, but the sound followed us. No, not followed. That's not right. The sound stayed where it was. But we could hear it better, like it was getting louder, or like our ears were adjusting to it. By midnight, all 43 men could hear it. By 1 a.m., we could feel it, the vibration, in the floor, in the walls, in our bones. Something on the other side of that rock was producing sound at a frequency we could feel. At 2 a.m., the sound changed. It became, I don't know the English word. In German, we say Gesang, singing, but not like humans sing. Like the sound was trying to be singing. Like something was imitating singing without understanding what singing is. I ordered the shift to end early. We packed up, started heading to the cage. That's when we heard it clearly. The sound wasn't coming from the wall Johann had drilled into. It was coming from below, from level 9, from the sections that were supposed to be abandoned. We got into the cage. I counted heads. All 43 men accounted for. As we ascended, the sound followed us up, following the shaft, like it was curious. When we reached the surface, it stopped, but I could still feel it, in my bones, in my teeth. I reported it to Thomas Garrett immediately. He went down the next morning to investigate. He came back 4 hours later and submitted his resignation. Whatever he found down there, he wouldn't tell me. He wouldn't tell anyone. He just said, "Karl, if you have family somewhere else, send them there, and don't work the deep levels anymore." I have family in Ohio. I sent my wife and children there on March 6th. I stayed because I needed the money. I regret that now. Karl Brunner was one of the 127 men who descended on March 24th. He came back up with the others at 12:03 a.m. on March 25th. He died 6 days later, on March 31st, at 3:17 a.m. Medical examiner listed cause of death as cardiac arrest, but the report includes a note. Patient presented with severe internal trauma, inconsistent with heart failure. Organ displacement noted. Heart position inverted. Cause unknown. His body was cremated before his family in Ohio could claim it. Company policy. Occupational health hazard. After Karl Brunner's report on March 3rd, Thomas Garrett conducted his investigation of Level 9. He took 3 men with him, experienced miners, men he trusted. They descended at 6 a.m. on March 4th. They were supposed to return by 10 a.m. They didn't emerge until 2 p.m., 8 hours underground, 4 hours longer than planned. When they came up, all 4 men were silent, pale, shaking. Thomas Garrett went directly to the company office and resigned. The 3 other men, Daniel Foster, William Chen, and Robert Mackenzie, requested immediate transfer to surface work. The company denied the transfers. All 3 men quit the next day. All 3 left Blackvein by March 7th. All 3 were interviewed decades later, separately, by different researchers, none of whom knew about the others' work. All 3 told the same story. Tom didn't want to take us, said it was too dangerous, but the company insisted. They wanted witnesses, wanted verification of Karl's reports. We went down to 9, checked the eastern sections first, nothing unusual. Then we went to the abandoned western sections, the areas that were closed off in 1919 after the cave-in. Tom had the keys to the barricade gates. We unlocked them and went in. The air was wrong immediately. Too warm, too humid. We were 1,900 feet down. It should have been cold and dry. It felt like summer down there, like walking into a greenhouse. And the smell. Christ, the smell. Organic, alive. But not like anything I'd ever smelled before. Not decay, not growth. Something between. Something that shouldn't exist. We went deeper into the abandoned section. Found the old drilling site. The place where they'd been trying to break through to a new seam before the cave-in. The wall had been modified. Not by us. Not by any tool I recognized. The rock had been scraped away, carved, in patterns, geometric patterns that made your eyes hurt to follow. And in the center, there was a hole, maybe 6 inches across, perfectly round, going back into the rock as far as our lights could reach. Tom put his hand near it, pulled it back immediately, said the air coming out was hot, hot enough to burn. William asked if we should report it to the company immediately. Turn back. Tom said yes. We started to leave. That's when we heard the sound. Not from the hole, from behind us, from the way we'd come. Something had followed us in, something large. We could hear it breathing, hear it moving, hear the scrape of, I don't know, not footsteps, not exactly, but movement, deliberate movement. We turned, shined our lights, nothing there, but we could still hear it, closer now, maybe 10 feet away. Tom told us to back up slowly. Don't run, don't show fear. We backed up. The thing kept pace, staying just outside our light, just beyond where we could see it. We reached the barricade gate. Tom opened it. We went through. He locked it behind us. Through the bars we could see something. A shadow, darker than the surrounding darkness, shaped wrong, moving wrong. It stood there, watching us, waiting. Tom said, "It can't get through the gate." And then the shadow moved closer, and we realized it was on our side of the gate. It had been on our side the whole time. We ran, all the way back to the main shaft, all the way to the cage. We didn't look back. When we reached the surface, Tom went straight to the office. Quit on the spot. I tried to do the same. Company threatened to have me arrested for breach of contract. Reminded me I owed them $312. Said if I quit, they'd seize my house, my belongings, everything. So I quit and left town that night. Abandoned everything. Walked to the county road and hitched a ride to Virginia. Best decision I ever made. Because whatever we saw down there in the dark, it knew we'd seen it. And I think it wanted us to see it. I think it wanted us to know it was there, waiting. Daniel Foster never returned to Kentucky. He worked in Virginia coal mines until 1952, when black lung disease forced him into retirement. He lived until 1981. In his final interview, recorded 3 months before his death, he was asked if he thought what happened in Blackveen could happen again, in other mines, other places. Every mine is different, but every mine goes down, down into the earth, down into the dark. And the deeper you go, the more you realize. We're not supposed to be down there. The earth has layers, geological layers, but also other layers, places that aren't meant for us, places that belong to things that were here first. Most mines, you dig and you find coal, you find minerals, you find rock. But sometimes you find places where the walls are thin, where something else is close. And if you dig there, if you break through, you let them know we're here, and they don't like that we're here. They don't like it at all. The recording ends. Sound, underground ambience returns, water dripping, timber creaking, and underneath, barely audible, that rhythmic sound, like breathing, like something vast, sleeping. Narrator, March 5th through March 23rd, 18 days between Carl Brunner's report and the final descent, 18 days of escalating incidents. March 7th, night shift on level 7 reports tools, missing, pickaxes, shovels, drilling bits, 12 pieces of equipment gone, search conducted, nothing found, items listed as stolen, men docked pay. March 9th, day shift on level 6 discovers one of the missing pickaxes, embedded in the ceiling, 20 feet up, driven into solid rock with enough force to bury the head completely. No explanation. Company removes the pickaxe. Incident not reported. March 11th, canaries begin dying. Not from gas, not from suffocation. They just stop. Hearts stop beating. Eyes stay open. Company replaces them. New canaries die within hours. By March 15th, the company stops providing canaries, claims supply shortage, orders miners to continue without them. The miners know better. March 12th, elevator malfunction. Cage descends to level 9 on its own. No operator, no passengers. Stays at 9 for 47 minutes, then ascends on its own. Company blames electrical fault, replaces control system. Happens again on March 14th, and March 17th, and March 19th. Always to level 9, always empty, always exactly 47 minutes. March 16th, temperature anomalies, multiple thermometers placed throughout the mine. Results make no sense. Level 1, 52 degrees Fahrenheit, normal. Level 2, 51 degrees, normal. Level 3, 50 degrees, normal. Level 4, 49 degrees, normal. Level 5, 48 degrees, normal. Level 6, 47 degrees, normal. Level 7, 46 degrees, normal. Level 8, 71 degrees, rising. Level 9, 89 degrees, impossible. The deeper you go, the warmer it should get, but gradually. 1 degree per 100 feet, predictable, geological. Between level 7 and level 9, The temperature increased by 43 degrees over 400 feet. Thermodynamically impossible. Unless something was generating heat, something below level 9. Company geologists investigated. Their report, filed March 18th, 6 days before the incident. Temperature anomalies on levels 8 and 9 cannot be explained by known geological processes. Heat signature suggests proximity to magma chamber or geothermal vent. However, geological surveys show no such features in this region. Recommend immediate investigation of source. Potential safety hazard if unexplained heat source continues to intensify. Alternative hypothesis. Equipment malfunction. Recommend recalibration of all thermometric devices. The company chose the second option. They recalibrated the thermometers. The new readings were identical. They recalibrated them again. Still identical. On March 22nd, they removed all thermometers from levels 8 and 9. Problem solved. March 20th. The sounds begin reaching the surface. Multiple witnesses report hearing something from the mine entrance at night. Not during the day. Only after sunset. Only when the mine was quiet. A low-frequency hum. Felt more than heard. Reverend Marsh investigated. Stood at the mine entrance from 8 p.m. to midnight. Recorded his observations in his journal. March 20th, entry. The sound is real. It manifests approximately every 7 minutes. Duration, 12 to 15 seconds. Frequency too low for comfortable human hearing, but tangible. Creates sensation of pressure in the chest, anxiety, dread. Locals say it sounds like the mountain is breathing. They're not wrong. I timed the intervals. 7 minutes between each exhalation. 7 minutes is 420 seconds. Human resting respiratory rate is 12 to 16 breaths per minute. If this were breathing, if this were some vast organism, a breathing cycle of 420 seconds would suggest something operating on a completely different temporal scale than humans. Something for which 7 minutes is the equivalent of our 4 seconds. Something enormous, something slow, something ancient. Pause. The journal entry continues in shakier handwriting. I stayed until midnight. The sound continued, regular, unchanging. But at 11:47 p.m. it changed. The interval decreased. 6 minutes between cycles, then 5, then 4. The breathing was getting faster, as if something was waking up. March 21st. Animals begin leaving the area. Livestock first. Horses refuse to approach the mine, have to be dragged to the stables. Eventually, they break free. By March 22nd, 17 horses have fled into the surrounding wilderness. Dogs next. Every dog in town becomes agitated after dark, barking at nothing, howling, staring at the mine entrance from a distance. Then they start leaving, one by one. Pack their families can't stop them. By March 23rd, Blackvein has no dogs left. Birds stop roosting near the town. The trees are empty, silent. Rats flee the mine entirely. The tunnels, usually infested with vermin, become clean, empty. Wrong. An old miner named Patrick O'Malley, 73 years old, retired, living on a company pension, tells anyone who will listen. The animals know. They always know. When the rats leave, you leave. That's the rule. That's how you survive underground. You watch the rats. When they run, you run. The rats are gone. We should be gone. Nobody listens to Patrick O'Malley. He leaves town on March 22nd. He's the last person to successfully evacuate before the incident. Sound, footsteps, walking away, fading into distance, silence left behind. Narrator, March 22nd. Company headquarters in Pittsburgh sends final ultimatum. Breakthrough to level 10 by March 31st, or mine will be closed. Town will be evacuated. All employees will be terminated. All debts will be called in immediately. The miners have 9 days. They have families. They have debts. They have nowhere else to go. They have no choice. March 23rd, Douglas Pike, the new foreman, calls a meeting. All miners required to attend. The meeting is held in the company hall. 134 men present. Pike stands at the front. Behind him, 2 company representatives from Pittsburgh, men in suits, men who've never been underground. Pike reads from a prepared statement. Tomorrow morning, March 24th, day shift will descend to level 9 and initiate breakthrough to level 10. This is a mandatory operation. All day shift miners will participate. Bonuses will be provided upon successful completion. Any miner who refuses will be terminated immediately, and all debts called due. Silence in the hall. Then a voice from the back. Tommy Bradford. What about the sounds? What about the heat? What about the equipment malfunctions? What about the fact that Thomas Garrett quit rather than go back down there? Pike doesn't answer. One of the company men does. Mr. Garrett suffered a nervous condition. He's receiving treatment. The sounds are geological settling. The heat is equipment malfunction. Everything has been investigated and resolved. The mine is safe. You will proceed as ordered. Another voice. Vincent Shaw. And if we refuse? The company man smiles. It's not a kind smile. Then you'll be evicted from company housing within 24 hours. Your debts will be transferred to the county sheriff for collection, and you'll be blacklisted from every mine in eastern Kentucky. You'll never work again. Your families will starve. Your choice. Sound. Silence. Heavy. Suffocating. The sound of men realizing they're trapped. Narrator. The meeting ends at 9 p.m. The miners walk home in silence. They know what's waiting down there. They know something is wrong. But they have families. They have children. They have no options. That night, several families hold what amounts to goodbye dinners. They don't say it out loud. They don't acknowledge it. But they know. Catherine Bradford cooks Tommy's favorite meal. Pot roast, potatoes, her mother's recipe. After dinner, Tommy takes his 3 children outside, shows them the stars, points out constellations, tells them stories. When they go to bed, he kisses each of them. Longer than usual. Catherine watches from the doorway. Later, she'll say she knew. She knew he didn't think he was coming back. But what could she do? What could any of them do? March 23rd, 11th p.m. Reverend Marsh makes a final entry in his journal before the incident. Tomorrow, 127 men will descend into the mine. They will attempt to break through to level 10, but they won't be breaking through to a new coal seam. They'll be breaking through to something else. I've spent the evening reviewing ancient texts, apocryphal writings, folklore from mining cultures across the world. There's a consistent theme. Every culture that digs deep into the earth has stories of things that live beneath. Not metaphors, not myths, warnings. The Greeks spoke of Tartarus, the deepest place, where the old things were imprisoned. The Norse spoke of Niflheim, the dark world beneath the roots of Yggdrasil. The Sumerians spoke of Irkala, the land of no return. Every culture. Same warning. There are places beneath the earth where things wait. Things that preceded us. Things that will outlast us. Things that should not be disturbed. We've been disturbing one for 35 years. Tomorrow, we're going to break through completely. And whatever's been waiting on the other side, it knows we're coming. I can feel it. In the air, in the ground, in my bones. It's been waiting for us. And tomorrow, it gets what it wants. God help us all. God help those men. God help this town. Because I don't think anything else can. The sound of a pen being set down, a book closing. Silence. Narrator, March 24th, 1922. 5:47 a.m. The sun hasn't risen yet. 127 men wake up, get dressed, kiss their wives, hug their children, walk to the mine. The breathing from below is faster now, audible, unmistakable. The mine entrance yawns open in the pre-dawn darkness. Waiting. The cage descends at 6:47 a.m. It takes 4 trips to get all 127 men down to level 9. By 7:15 a.m., they're all underground. The last thing Robert Mills, the cage operator, hears before the cage descends for the final time. Singing. Faint, distant, coming from deep below. Not human singing, not quite. Something trying to sing, something that's been learning. And that's when they reached level 9. That's when they set up their equipment. That's when they began drilling into the wall. That's when the drill bit broke through into empty space. That's when the warm air rushed out. That's when they looked through the hole and saw what was waiting. And that's when everything changed. At 11:30 a.m. on March 24th, 1922, communication with Level 9 ceased entirely. At the surface, families began to gather. By noon, 200 people stood at the mine entrance, waiting, listening, hearing nothing, and that nothing, that silence, that was worse than any sound, because they knew. Deep down, they all knew. The men weren't coming back. Not the same way, not the same men.